big questions still remain about 3I Atlas. Now, a lawmaker is pressing NASA for new images of the space phenomenon. And could it also have a traveling companion? We welcome back Dr. Avi Loeb. He's an astrophysicist at Harvard University for an update on this. Okay, last time you were here, we were waiting to see if this object would seem to maneuver as it got closer to the sun or do anything. What's the verdict there?
Well, thanks for having me. It did maneuver. It deviated from the path that we would have expected it to go through if its trajectory was sculpted by gravity alone. And the amount of boost to its velocity was equivalent to a jet carrying 5 billion tons of matter that would give it a recoil. Now, as of this morning, some observers noticed that it has a set of jets around it, more than 7. Some headed towards the sun, some away from the sun. It's a spectacular view that we have right now after it passed closest to the sun on October 29th. Mm-hmm. It became bluer than the sun. It was 5 times brighter than it was before it came close to the sun.
Wow.
So the action is happening right now, and in the coming days and weeks, we should learn much more about it.
We are talking about that interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. Most scientists think it's a comet, but one high-profile Harvard astronomer has been making the case on this show and other places that its anomalous behavior and characteristics suggest that it might be alien technology of one kind or another, perhaps a probe. 3I Atlas recently passed closest to the sun and will soon pass close to the Earth. But it may not be in one piece when it does. Professor Loeb says that based on his calculations, it looks like 3I Atlas has been losing an extreme amount of mass, which could mean it's exploded into a dozen smaller pieces. So, is it just another fascinating celestial phenomenon, or did the mothership just separate into a squadron of reconnaissance aircraft? Harvard professor Avi Loeb joins us now. That question is only slightly in jest, given everything you've been saying. Did we see it explode, or did we just happen to go back and measure it and say, oh my gosh, it's now much smaller and in a few different pieces?
Well, what we see are 7 jets coming out of these objects, more than 7 actually, after it passed close to the sun on October 29th. And we can see that some of these jets are pointed towards the sun, and they penetrate over 1 million kilometers through the solar wind. We know the properties, the density and speed of the solar wind, so we can figure out that for a natural comet, with the characteristic outflow speed of, these jets that come off pockets of ice on a natural comet, given that speed, we can tell that there is a lot of mass carried by these jets so that they can penetrate through the solar wind, about 5 billion tons. And in order to get that much mass out of ice, we need a large surface area of an object. And it turns out that it's a surface area of an object that is at least 20 kilometers in diameter, much bigger than the original estimate for the size of the object. So that would mean for a natural comet that it was broken up into many pieces such that the surface area, the total amount of surface of these many pieces adds up to the amount of mass that we need to release by vaporizing volatiles. Now, in the case of a technological object, maybe the jets are coming out of thrusters, in which case technological thrusters can reach much higher speeds for the gas that comes out of them, in which case we don't need as much mass. The fuel can be a small fraction of the mass of the spacecraft. So the coming weeks will be really decisive. Either we see a fragmented object where the pieces will get separated from each other by the tide from the sun, or we would see an object that maintains its integrity and has very high-speed jets coming out of it, in which case we will have to contemplate a technological origin.
Check out these new images that show 3I Atlas in a whole new light. What's going on with this the situation? What are these jets? Is it streaming out? What is all this? Is it breaking up after possibly going behind our sun? A little confusing because this all comes after last week images showed the object with no tail. Weird. So how did the object go from an anti-tail to a tail to a no tail to an anti-tail to whatever it is that we are now seeing? Let's get straight over to Harvard astronomer Professor Avi Loeb, expert on all things interstellar. Professor, great to see you. So is this a breakup of 3I Atlas? What does this all mean here?
Well, thanks for having me. We see more than 7 jets that are tightly collimated coming out of this object. And of course, there are 2 possibilities that we considered all along, that these jets are naturally produced out of ice on the surface of a rock. And the second possibility is that they might be thrusters on the technological spacecraft. And so how do we tell the difference? Well, if it's a natural object, then we know the temperature on the surface of a rock, given its distance from the sun, and that gives the characteristic speed of any volatiles that get sublimated and ejected from those pockets of ice. And so knowing the speed, we can see how far these jets go into the solar wind. We know the properties of the solar wind, and these jets appear to be, some of them in the direction of the sun, and they go 1 million kilometers away from the object. So knowing the properties, the speed and the density of the solar wind, we can infer how much mass is being carried by these jets. And I did the calculation, and I found of the order of 5 billion tons of material. Now we ask, okay, how much energy is needed to sublimate ice with such a large mass? And the answer is, well, if it's carbon dioxide, which is easiest to sublimate, I mean, water takes more energy, but carbon dioxide requires a surface area of an object that is 20 kilometers in diameter, much bigger than we estimated for the actual nucleus of 3I Atlas based on the Hubble image that was obtained back in July. So what does it mean? It means that in the natural case, the object might have broken into pieces so that the sum of the areas of all the pieces add up to the area that is required. So, and there should be tens of those pieces, maybe hundreds. And we don't have a good enough image yet to figure out if there are pieces. They would get separated by the tidal force of the sun as we move into the next few weeks. However, if it's a technological object, and we're talking about technological thrusters, those usually eject gas at a much higher speed. Rockets eject gas at 10 times faster speed than expected for volatiles on the surface of a comet, and the ion thrusters go up to 100 times the speed of those natural pockets of ice. And so we would expect much less mass to be carried in these jets at much higher speed in the case of a technological object. And the coming weeks will tell us the answer, because if this object is broken up, we will see the pieces. We would see slow-moving jets with a lot of mass in them. On the other hand, if it's a technological object, very fast jets with much less material in them, and the object maintains its integrity as it moves along. It did get hotter, but it's still much cooler than the surface of the sun, which is 5,800 degrees. And so we would expect it to be redder than the sun, but it became bluer than the sun. And the question is why? And that's not fully understood. Also, the kind of velocity kick that it got should have released a lot of matter. It's not clear that we're seeing it. There is no cometary tail. Right. What we see is a set of jets around it as of this morning, and we have to figure out what exactly is going on there.
Okay, so it was on a trajectory to leave our solar system. Real quick, is that the path that we're still watching for, or has this maneuver taken it on a different course?
So far, it's a small maneuver. The key question is whether released any smaller objects, probes towards the planets. And of course, we should watch our sky close to Earth. I asked my research team at the Galileo Project to analyze data in the coming months to figure it out. And also NASA can watch out the vicinity of Mars. And so we very much look forward to having more data that will guide us.
Okay.
It's like a detective story.
It does seem like, you know, every day we're seeing more and more imagery from Earth and from beyond of 3I Atlas. Do you expect any surprises before then? And look, we talk a lot. Like, you and I are basically becoming, you know, best friends on my phone here. I have sensed like a little bit of a tone shift from you. I might be reading into it. Are you worried at all as this thing gets a little bit closer, or do you still think that this is most likely natural?
No, I'm just waiting for the evidence to come in, and whatever it is, that's the fun of doing science, you know, that we should be guided by data. So science, the foundation of science is the curiosity, the humility to learn. It's a learning experience, work in progress. And it's very different than the arrogance of expertise, where based on past knowledge, you assume that you can forecast what nature would reveal.
Please like and subscribe.